All right, we got another win. Texans win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. It wasn't always pretty. It wasn't always certain, but the Texans get the dub 24-20. It is SNL Reaction Monday. Let's start with what we liked from this game, because there's plenty to nitpick. There's plenty to nickel and dime and all that. Let's start with what we liked from this game, from this performance against the Texans Jags.
I mean, I like the fact that Nico Collins is one of the most essential players in all of football, and when the team needs to lean on him, they lean on him. I don't know that any team is going to have a non-quarterback that is as essential to their success as Nico Collins is to this Texans team. I mean, when they need somebody, they've got Nico Collins. He's the only guy that consistently gets open in the wide receiver room, and they went to him time and time and time again. And if CJ hadn't missed the throw at the end of the first half, they had a couple of more points. Like, Nico is just so damn good. And that's probably the thing that jumps off the page to me from this performance. That's the best of the good from this Texans team, is that you can rely on Nico Collins. We've seen CJ Stroud just have everything that he needs to drag a team across the line for victory. He did that again in this matchup. So that was fantastic to see. And then, look, this defense, there's some deceptive points to it, but outside of the short field that they had to defend to allow just 13 points, you can live with that almost every game. So I think there's some really good stuff from this game. I think that probably takes the cake for me as the top three. Is CJ can just do CJ things and drag this team to victory. Nico is the most reliable thing that this team has, and this defense did more than enough and did their job for most of this game to give the Texans an opportunity to win this one on offense.
For me, I think the best thing for me is that there's like a contagious factor with CJ Stroud, which I think is good, because there is a certain element that I guess you don't want to get used to, where I always call it the CJ saves all butts factor. But like, even late in the game, you have Jalen Petrie and Eric Murray with back-to-back PBUs before they get the ball. It does seem like, whatever limitations there may be on this team, if you just are within one possession or you have a chance late in the game, there's almost like a something comes over a lot of these guys, and there's just a factor and element that CJ Stroud has that I think like even elevates what it is. And I agree with you on Nico. I do wonder, like, are teams really giving him as much attention as someone who with that production should have? I wonder if we get to a point later in the season where early in the season, in the offseason, we're saying, man, who's going to lead this team in receiving? And, oh, man, how do you take away one of these guys? I do wonder if we get to a point where teams approach Nico Collins with, all right, we're going to take him out, and we're going to make Diggs and Dell and Schultz and all these other guys beat us. I wonder if we get to that point. But for me, there just seems to be like I don't want to say Brady-like, I don't want to say Mahomes-like, but when a really, really good quarterback, when you have a really, really good quarterback, and no matter what the performances look like, it just doesn't seem to matter when there's a couple of minutes left. So that's my biggest takeaway, is that CJ Stroud, as long as you have CJ against these types of teams, you don't have to play, quote, elite football, and you're still able to get it done.
Yeah, that was a game that had enough good and plenty of bad to it for the Texans. They did enough, but there's plenty of stuff that they can clean up coming out of this one. Look, they're 3-1. You'd much rather be 3-1 than 2-2 or 1-3, whatever. But there's so much bad from this game that they can clean up going forward. But they had more than enough good there towards the end to get this thing done against the Jaguars team. It's kind of like the way I would describe the Minnesota game. A lot of teams in the NFL would have beat the Texans the way they played against Minnesota. A lot of teams would have beat the Texans the way they played against the Jaguars. They just so happened to play the Jaguars.
Penalties still a thing. Coming up in a little bit, there's one thing that I think DeMeco needs to do to send a message to the team. I think it's almost a must. I think there's something that must be done by DeMeco. We'll get to that in a second. It is Reaction Monday. We have a super chat. GC, shout out to you for swarming the super chat.
You ain't never hate. Swarm.
Bills seem beatable, just got to clean up. Yeah, I mean, they lost yesterday to a good Baltimore team. I don't look at Buffalo and say, well, that's a really good matchup for the Texans. I actually
yeah, they seem really beatable if you've got Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, and the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good measurement against Buffalo, but I don't look at. I didn't watch that game yesterday and say, wow, the Texans are really going to be able to do this, because the Texans. I mean, Mixon coming back will help. But
he ain't Derrick Henry, and that ain't the Baltimore Ravens offensive line.
Yeah. So I guess beatable. Yeah. I mean, I guess we've seen them lose, so we know that they can lose. But I didn't watch that and say, okay, this team's beatable. Still haven't seen the line for Texans Bills up yet. I was looking at my my lines. I see a lot of lines. I don't see the Bills Texans up just quite yet. So we'll keep an eye on that. But the Texans beat the Jags. The offensive line, that was kind of the topic coming in. What did we make of the offensive line? I mean, let's be honest. If you're grading them compared to last week, then I guess they got better, but they were lining up correctly, but it wasn't anything to write home about. So I didn't feel great about this offensive line one bit. And it's still a little bit of a concern. Maybe Mixon just really, really elevates their play, and they look a lot better when it comes to the ability to run the rock. But I didn't think, I mean, sure, you cleaned up they know how to line up right. That's good. But it's still very sloppy. They're getting beat at certain times. They're not consistently blocking. The running backs, like if you look at the overall stats, they're not great, but I don't know how much more the running backs could have done. There were times where it looked like maybe Akers was going backwards when he could have gone forwards, but when he went forwards, he was running into walls. So I don't even know how to evaluate that. There were other times where it looked like CJ Stroud was kind of making the most of what they gave him. The offensive line wasn't good. And I'm getting to the point where I'm going to start. I did my grades this morning on Age Football. I'm getting to the point where with the running backs, I don't expect much. So they're almost graded on a curve. I still treat the offensive line like it's a heavily invested offensive line, but I'm almost getting to the point where I'm going to start treating them like the running backs, in that I expect as much from this offensive line. This is sad. I expect as much from this offensive line as I do Cam Akers, Dare Ogunbowale, and JJ Taylor, the running backs without Mixon. And that's unfortunate, but I think that might be the reality that we're dealing with when it comes to this O-line.
The O-line stunk. And for a Jacksonville Jaguars team that is not a super impressive football team when it comes to still slowing down things and stopping the run, the offensive line stunk. They're missing their top two linebackers on this team. One of their best defensive linemen goes out at one point, and you can't run the football against them. And you tried a bunch. You tried a bunch on first down to run the football. You actually threw the ball more than you ran the ball on first down. But first down runs were awful, and it put this team behind the sticks way too many times. Thank goodness C.J. Stroud, Nico Collins, the passing attack were able to make up for it. And they did have a moment here or there where they had a run here or there where it looked good, but they didn't run the football. You should have been able to bowl over the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are missing two of their top linebackers, their leading tacklers, and you didn't do that. The pass blocking still.
They also had a pretty good player leave the game.
Yes,
during the game. I don't know that the Texans win the game if Allen doesn't leave the game. If we're just being honest with ourselves,
the pass blocking was still suspect. And for everyone that wanted life after Laramie Tunsil, you got 20 snaps of it. You got 20 snaps of it with Blake Fisher in there when Tunsil was out. Okay, Fisher played 22 snaps. He lined up as a tight end twice, and then he replaced Laramie for 20 snaps. I got 20 snaps for Blake Fisher. Okay.
Oh, this is what's up right here.
3 of those were penalties. So let's call it 17 snaps that counted.
But not on him.
Not on him. 3 of those were penalties by the offense. So let's call it 17 snaps. In those 17 snaps, I have 5 pressures and his guy making the play 3 times outside of those 5 pressures. The only 2 quarterback hits were allowed by Blake Fisher when Josh Hines Allen was on the field and just blew past him. The final few Blake Fisher snaps were Josh Hines Allen pressure, and he misses the block on a stunt. Blake Fisher stunk. Okay, so I know we're disappointed with Laramie Tunsil's production, but the 20 snaps I saw of Blake Fisher, he ain't ready to step in for Laramie Tunsil. So we got life after Tunsil for 20 snaps, and let me tell you, it sucked. Laramie wasn't great when he got back in there, but he's much better than Blake Fisher. So we can put that thing to rest for a week or two until we see more Blake Fisher when he gets in there, should Titus go out or Laramie go out. So that stunk. Titus wasn't very good. And then the interior guys, Kenyon Green had his worst game of the season. He was terrible. He got blown up. I was watching the Fisher snaps, and I'm just seeing Kenyon Green just get walked back like it was his rookie year all over again. I don't know. I mean, he had illness earlier in the week that limited him. Was he not feeling good? Was he not ready for this one? I don't know. He played most of the snaps. Kendrick Green was in there for a moment, but Kenyon got back in there. Shaq Mason's not very good. And then Scruggs is very inconsistent. Like, the interior offensive line's a bigger issue than the tackles, especially when the tackles aren't making penalties. Shaq Mason had a penalty. Kenyon Green had a couple of penalties. Like, it's just a bad offensive line. I'm not to the point where I'm giving them the break and grading on a curve like you. They've got to be better. They've just got to be better. You paid too much. You invested too much in this offensive line. It's got to get better.
How does that happen? I mean, that's easy to say, but honestly, how exactly does that happen?
Those guys have got to give a crap a little bit more. They've got to be better on their basics, and you probably have to call plays that make it easy for them to succeed. No more of these exotic, Kenyon swings over to this side to try to block somebody, or Shaq's trying to get out, or there was a Laramie play where he just missed somebody on a Akers run to the outside. And like even Fisher, when he was in there, he's downfield, he just stops blocking the guy. That guy's in there to help make the play. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, there's like two dudes that play to the whistle, like, on offense. Like, what? It's effort, it's focus, and they probably have to dumb down some of the play calling and make it less exotic.
Let's hear. I talked to Titus Howard after this game, and I think this is just kind of interesting because I don't know that he agrees with your assessment of how the O-line played. He does seem excited to play Buffalo, but here was just a little back and forth with Titus Howard on how they performed.
The bounce back from last week to this week from the O-line perspective.
I thought we ran off the ball a little bit better this week. There's always stuff we can correct as far as like the penalties and stuff like that. But I thought we protected better this week. A couple downs when the guys got some sacks and stuff, but I feel like it was better. Still got room for improvement. We got to still focus on getting rid of the little things, but the group's only going to get better week by week, so I'm not worried about that.
You mentioned the defense. How big was the defense for giving y'all the chance to get that final drive?
Man, them boys balled out. They balled out for sure, and that drive was big, man. Those guys, when we get in those situations, they always make those plays, and so we know we can count on them. And they see they can count on us.
3-1 start. I don't know that you've started 3-1 since you've been here. That's got to be good. It kind of feels like, despite the wins, it's like we can be a lot better.
Yeah, man, we 3-1, and we ain't nowhere near where we can be at. So, that just lets you know the potential this team has. So we got to go out there and keep working, keep grinding, keep taking care of the little things, and we're gonna show y'all what we can really do.
From a competitive standpoint, like, it seems like after a loss, it's like on to like wipe it away. I don't want to get too far ahead. I know you don't want to enjoy it, but is it cool that y'all get to kind of measure yourself against Buffalo, which is kind of the tier you are trying to get in?
For sure, yeah, they're a good team. We're a good team too. So they're gonna have to come in here. So we're gonna have to take care of our home. I think we're gonna do that. We're gonna show them what Texas football about. So we just gotta keep watching film, see what they're good at. Correct what we need to correct. It's gonna be a good game.
All right, there you go. It's Titus Howard. So I don't know that he thought it was that bad.
The pass blocking was a little bit better than last week. It was, but when it's terrible and it's not bad is the improvement. That's still not good enough. Like, you don't have one of the most expensive tackle duos in football for the pass blocking to be not bad. Like, you have one of the most expensive tackle duos in football so that the quarterback doesn't get touched. Now, Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil, it's not their job to block the interior like the three guys and the performance that those guys had, but it's still not excellent. It needs to be excellent for what the Texans invested. Now, the scary part, as we talk about offensive line for 4 weeks and pass blocking for 4 weeks, is the talent may not be there. Like the top end talent, the potential that we've hoped for may not be there.
What do you mean may not?
Well, it hasn't been there through 4 games. What I'm saying is, when I say may not, means that they may not be able to get to that level. Like what you paid for, you may not get. Like
may not.
Yes, I keep saying may not because
you still have hope that this is that you're gonna get a return on investment on Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil being 2 of the top 5 highest paid tackles in the league, Shaq Mason being one of the top 10 highest paid guards in the league, Juice Scruggs being a 2nd-round pick, and Kenyon Green being a 1st-round pick. You still have hope that return on investment is going to be validated?
Do I have hope they can be better than they have been? Yes.
Yeah, better is fine, but you said that they're not, that they're going to validate.
That's my point. It's
not happening.
That's my point. Is that you get to the point where you wonder, okay, if they're not going to be able to achieve what you thought they were going to, what is? Can I finish my statement? If you're not going to achieve what you thought they were going to get to, where is the new ceiling for them? Where are they?
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at.
I know you're getting. I just think you need to I think you need to look at it as that's not going to happen.
Okay, so the ceiling is down. The ceiling is down for you.
Yes.
There's no chance they can get to where they were supposed to be.
But this offensive line, they're not going to do that. They're going to need miraculous performances by CJ Stroud. We'll get on the defensive side of the rock. It's not as bad as the offensive line, but there's something very, very glaring that I don't know how much that gets. But I mean, I think it's silly, quite frankly, to even say when it comes to this offensive line, unless you think they just.
So what's the top? What's the top end potential of this offensive line?
The top end potential of this offensive line is that it can be all right. All right. And by all right, I mean, like, just sometimes okay, and then other times bad, and you have to overcome it.
So then whose fault is it, and who pays for it in the offseason? Is one of these guys losing their job on the offensive line? Is it the O-line coach? Is it, Caserio's not getting fired because the O-line's not any good?
I think that, like, you're asking me whose fault is it? I mean, I like this case study. Like, I think there's a combination of things when it comes to the fault of the offensive line. First of all, I think I think they were a little bit loose and reckless with it because they had the luxury of having a bunch of young guys on rookie contracts. Like, I think if CJ Stroud is one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL, and I don't think that they bend over backwards to make Titus Howard one of the top 5 highest paid tackles in the game. So I think they got a little bit reckless and had a little bit more disposable cap money to make these types of moves. I think Nick Caserio, just like Shaq Mason, because of what he did in New England, I think this is the only taste of, like, Patriot way type of thing. I think Kenyon Green was just a bad pick at that point, and I think Juice Scruggs, the jury's still out. Although I just don't see him road mauling mofo's like I do a lot of centers, like even young centers. So I don't know. I still have hope for Juice, and I think Laramie's Laramie. I think Laramie's just kind of developed into a guy that's a really, really good business guy, and he's good at what he does, and it's something that most teams would want. But I think you can go back to the beginning of when he got here, where that mindset developed. So that's who I would blame.
So they've made 5 mistakes that have compounded on each other.
I don't know that I consider Laramie. I mean, it was a bad trade, like trading 2 firsts and a second for Laramie Tunsil. I think that was rich. But I don't know, like, from when they got here, I don't know that it was a mistake keeping Tunsil around. I don't know that was a mistake.
Okay, so we'll call it 3 with a question on Scruggs, because, like,
the Titus Howard's extension made 0 sense. That was weird. That was honestly just strange. I didn't get that. And I'll admit I was wrong about Nico. Like, how much is the price going to go up? Because I think the price will go up. So I'm not right about this stuff all the time. But I mean, they did have a 1,200 yard or whatever year from Nico Collins. You never, ever, ever, ever saw a glimpse of Titus Howard is going to be a top 5 right tackle in the league. I'm sorry, you never saw that.
He's ridden one game against TJ Watt to that contract.
Yeah, I have no idea. Where that came from. So look, maybe you just have to be all right, and CJ Stroud can elevate his play. Like we've seen Brady, we've seen Mahomes, like we've seen those guys. But think about the names that I'm saying when it comes to like elevating that. But I'm pushing back on you just because I know what you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing with it. But all I'm saying is there has to be a different formula than this offensive line has to be. If that's creativity with coaching, if that's overcoming it in other ways, if it's situational football where you make plays, that's fine. But I just if this offensive line thing is just gone for me.
Well, the only thing that they've got left to do is simplify the coaching and some of the play calling. And look, Kendrick Green, if Kenyon can't get it done, Kenyon can't be consistent. Let's see what Kendrick Green has. And if Titus doesn't solidify his spot, let's see what Blake Fisher can do at right tackle, though the returns at left tackle in 20 snaps were not good.
Yeah. So do you think there is a possibility?
I cannot foresee DeMeco Ryans spending 13 more games with this offensive line unless there's unless they level off to average as an offensive line. I cannot foresee him keeping these 5 guys in there and not making any changes. If they are inconsistent like they have been through the first month, in the next month, somebody has to, there has to be some sort of change. Maybe it's Patterson, maybe it's Kendrick Green, maybe it's Fisher, but there has to be some sort of change if they continue to be inconsistent. But look, I'm with you.
Yeah.
If you
your audience, and it's a different, it's a different audience sometimes. I think y'all might want to click over to Texans radio or something like that. Or if that's what it is, because I'm seeing like the season's over, I'm being negative. I've watched this offensive line develop from the very beginning right up close. I've watched this offensive line the last few days. All I'm saying is if you're saying what Cody said just a minute ago and that this team is dependent on the offensive line, then that's a wrap. Now, if you're saying, well, CJ Stroud can overcome this offensive line and you can win games, or the defense can force turnovers and they can pressure, and maybe Stingley and Lassiter become elite and we start seeing Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson get to the quarterback in those ways, then I can get that formula. But if the formula is this offensive line validating what they're being paid, it's a formula. You might as well just lower your expectations. You can win the division. But as far as getting elite and getting to where you're playing one of the 2 final Sundays, you can maybe do it, but your ceiling is limited. That's my point. I'm giving up on betting on the offensive line. If you believe that this offensive line is going to become really, really good, congratulations. I wish I had that optimism. I just don't have it.
Coming into the season, I would have said best potential is really good. That's gone. That's gone. Can they be good on a game basis here or there? Sure. I'm just hoping that they turn into an average offensive line. And this team can succeed with an average offensive line, but they've been below average for a month now. So the scary part is you've already adjusted once. You don't believe the top end potential that they started the year with is there. So now can they even get to the adjusted potential? And then can they just be average? Like if they can't be average, this is going to be a huge weakness for the rest of the season that can't get fixed. Like you don't really have that, like maybe one swap of a guy here or there makes them a little bit better, but it's not going to solve everything. So that's the scary part about this offensive line is if they can't get to the consistent level of average.
Yeah,
they're a below average line every
week. What we're looking for, then yes, then maybe you can do that. But you'll never.
Could they be a good offensive line for the rest of the year? Is that possible in your eyes?
Like every week, or like good more than they're bad?
Good more than they're bad. That's a no.
Maybe. I mean, maybe. I mean, because I think Mixon makes them better. I think CJ makes them better. But the problem with it is I think you're dependent on things that aren't the offensive line. You know what I mean? Like it's like there's some offensive lines that if the backup running back's in, they can block and they can clear holes. It almost feels like Mixon and CJ are what makes the offensive line better, which is great, but. Yeah, I don't feel good about the offensive line.
The offensive line is bad food on a cruise. You can still have fun, but you're going to talk about how bad the food was the entire time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's almost like you're trying to liquidate. Is that the financial term? Liquidate your bad investment with the offensive line.
Yeah, you're trying to sell the stock, but there's nobody to buy in the stock. Yeah, you'd love to get out from under the stock, but there's nobody that could buy the stock from you.
Justin says 2 of the starters have played like 2 games, and Landry is already done with them. LOL. 2 games. Where's the 2 games?
They have had. So if there's 2 halves to the offensive line every game, there's 8 halves. There's a pass rush, or there's a run blocking and pass blocking. They've had 4 below par pass blocking performances, and they've had 3 below par run blocking performances. They blocked the living hell out of the Colts. Good job.
Yeah.
But if you're 1 for 8, that's not good enough. That's not good enough.
There's something I want to look at, and we'll get to the one thing DeMeco Ryans needs to do in a sec. Shout out to all the people in here. It is SNL Reaction Monday. Landry Locker. Cody Stoots here. The AFC South games, I think there's 2 ways to look at them. And I actually kind of lean on like the positive side of these, because on one hand, you can say this Texans team could easily be 0-4, and they're a couple of plays away from being 0-4, but they're 3-1, and good teams find ways to win ugly. But if you look at the 2 AFC South teams, the 2 AFC South teams that they've beaten, I think the biggest difference has been the opposing quarterback, whether it was Anthony Richardson in week 1 or Trevor Lawrence in week 4, just wasn't able to make plays that were there and take advantage of opportunities that were there in order to win the game. Anthony Richardson missed Adonai Mitchell a couple of times. You saw Lawrence miss Christian Kirk when he had Petrie on him, probably would have been a long touchdown, and then he missed Brian Thomas, and I think he made a couple of other mistakes.
You want to go through all the Lawrence misses real quick?
Yes, please.
Okay. 3rd and 5 to Christian Kirk on the first drive. Petrie was in coverage. It cost him a first down. 2nd and 14 to Brian Thomas on the 3rd drive. Lassiter bit on a double move. It cost him a touchdown. 1st and 10 to Brian Thomas on the 4th drive. Stingley was the closest defender. It cost him 15 yards. 3rd and 1 to Travis Etienne on the 6th drive. It cost him a first down. He just was a little bit too far out in front of Etienne. 1st and 10 to Christian Kirk on the 8th drive. Bullock was in coverage, but Kirk beat somebody else in the zone. Bullock was just chasing him. It cost him a touchdown. Would have been a touchdown. 2nd and 10 to Gabe Davis on the 8th drive. The very next play after the missed touchdown, he's too high. Murray's in coverage. It would have cost him a first down. And 3rd and 10 to Brian Thomas on the 10th drive. It was a zone play. He's too far out in front of Thomas, actually gets Thomas hurt because he throws it too far out in front of him, and Thomas tries to reel it in with his right hand. Stingley destroys his hand and almost intercepts the ball. But if he'd put it on Thomas, he could have caught it, cost him a first down. Those are all the Lawrence misses. I like to call him Mrs. Lawrence.
Yeah, and I think that's Mrs. Lawrence. I think that's the one thing is, on one hand, you can say, a good quarterback they would have lost, but on the other hand, they don't have the most important position. So you're looking at Richardson and you're looking at Lawrence, and you're throwing those guys like in the same situation. Like if you look at the Texans even past this year, and I think if you look at this Texans team, it's a young team that you expect to be good for a while. That's awesome that it's the teams in your division. Like if it would be one thing if it were the Bears, because that doesn't really impact you consistently. But the fact it was in the division, and then we're not even mentioning Will Levis. Like you've already kind of benefited from having like a significant quarterback in your division. And I think that's a good thing. On one hand, you can evaluate and say, okay, they would have perhaps lost that game against a better quarterback. But on the other hand, the two of the three teams in your division just have trash quarterbacks, which I think is a really, really good thing.
And there's not a huge like avenue to them getting a whole heck of a lot better at quarterback. Like I don't love this quarterback class. I think there've been some pretty decent performances through the first few weeks of college football, but it doesn't feel like some of these previous quarterback classes. So if the Titans want to go draft a guy, be my guest. Like if you want to go draft a guy out of this quarterback class, be my guest. I'm not super high on these guys. There's not a big name free agent changing teams a la Kirk Cousins coming up here anytime soon. And the Jaguars are pot committed to Trevor Lawrence. They paid him. It was an idiotic idea to pay him. They paid him $275 million.
What alternative did they have, though?
They should have wrote it out for one more year, and then they could have at least put him on a contract that is a lot more manageable to move out of in case they find an option. Like the Jaguars were in a not totally different, but not totally the same situation as the Giants. Like they had a guy. They felt pretty good about their guy. The Jaguars felt better about Lawrence than the Giants did about Daniel Jones, but they paid him a whole bunch of money that they didn't have to pay him at that point. And then they kind of became pot committed. The Jaguars are pot committed for a much longer time than the Giants ended up being for Daniel Jones. They're going to move on from Jones. The Jaguars are stuck with Lawrence for the next 3 seasons. It becomes impossible to move him. If they'd waited one more year, the contract is half as expensive because I don't believe he would have showcased that he deserved $275 million. It's the same thing that happened to the Carson Wentz and Jared Goff situation. You paid a guy when you didn't have to pay the guy. He immediately didn't pay off on that contract. Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. It's a situation you don't want to be in because you don't know where the light at the end of the tunnel is. Sometimes you just get lucky and you find the quarterback. Trevor Lawrence yesterday, I mean, it's weird. I think Kunkel said that he throws like dimes into traffic and then he misses like the most basic of basic throws. And I think that's the best way to put it. It almost looked like the run before the goal line stand. I don't know if he was just kind of imagining it or what, but he was almost acting as if he had the option to tuck that. And it would have been a wide open touchdown had he done it. I don't know.
That was awful.
Well, I don't know if it was really a zone read or not, or if he was just kind of being weird about it.
I wonder if that was
it did look like he kind of tried to pull it back, though.
I wonder if that was a play that they call because that's a play that they call, and he has the option if he sees it because everything's spread out to tuck it and go. Daniil Hunter, Daniil Hunter was asked after the game, "Did you expect him to run?" He was like, "No, we didn't expect him to run, but everybody was on their keys, so we tackled him." It's like that was a horrible play call. I thought they should
about the fourth. I'm talking about the one before. The one before they switched sides. Like before they switched sides, there was a run, and Trevor Lawrence he's holding the ball almost like he wanted to keep it, and then he kind of takes 2 steps towards the pylon, and he just kind of like claps his hands like almost like, man, this was like a zone read option. I should have kept it.
Oh, I see what I understand.
Yeah, because you're talking about because they were going left before the goal line stand, but there was a play there because that was good hustle to catch Biggs, because if you don't catch him, then you might not win the game. So I'm sure DeMeco gave some praise there. But I'm talking about before that, and I don't know whether it was or wasn't, or if he's just like going through some sort of mental thing. But that was the play I was talking about.
I remember you saying he should have kept it. I remember you saying
if he could. I don't know. Sometimes those are just their runs all the way. So
they just show that, not necessarily because you can call that. They just show that.
Yeah. The reality about the Texans with where they are is it's not BOB. You know, I don't like it doesn't matter. It was a win in the big scheme of things in the standings. Yes, that helps, but I don't think this is a team, and they don't speak like a team that is just happy winning. They seem to have like bigger goals. They want to look better. I actually like watching DeMeco's press conference yesterday. I was listening to the post game show. I thought he actually sounded pretty pissed. Like DeMeco's not going to go up there and throw shit and get ticked off and all that, but I thought he actually sounded pretty pissed off and unpleased. Like he's happy to win, but I actually thought DeMeco sounded kind of disgusted with the way the performances went. And if you want DeMeco to be one of these guys that's going to go up there and scream and yell in front of the media, and it's just not it's not what he's going to do. At least not in front of us. But I thought he actually sounded pretty angry for DeMeco.
He's also not going to pull a Doug Peterson and basically say we can't make the plays, which is what Peterson said after the game yesterday. So you mentioned it. He started with no such thing as an ugly win. The goal is to win every week. It doesn't matter how we win. We just got to get the win. The next question is about penalties. And he's like, the penalties that bug me are the ones that we can control, the mental penalties.
Not hustle penalties, like a Goombawali's penalty, not good. But it's just, I mean, he's in the middle of the field. He's grabbing him behind. Like that's you can figure that out. You know, that happens.
I'll live with a holding call that keeps the quarterback from getting killed. Like I'll live with that. But like false start, ineligible man downfield in the red zone, like those are really hard to deal with. And he goes right into it. He's like, they bug me. I can't stand them. We got to play smart.
Yeah,
we got to get guys in there.
He seemed ticked, right? He seemed like ticked for DeMeco. He seemed ticked.
Yeah, and that's about as critical as he's going to publicly get on. And he didn't even get critical on one guy, but that's about as publicly critical as he's going to get. Is, hey, like boneheaded penalties? Like, when was the last time you heard him describe penalties as boneheaded penalties? Like, he was not. And he even said, if you watch the locker room speech that the Texans tweeted out, he even says, like, guys, look how good we can be when we have stuff cleaned up. Like we saw moments in that game. We've got to take care of our business. Like he even said it in the post-game speech to the guys while he's handing out game balls. Like, we got to be better. Like, they're not ignoring.
Yeah.
Like, they're not just – it felt like Bill O'Brien, your point is well made, Landry. Bill O'Brien, all he cared about was winning, and it didn't matter how they won. And you'd see the same issues every week, and all he cared about was that they won, not fixing the issues. DeMeco Ryans cares about winning, and he cares about fixing those issues.
Yes, and I think you look at like 2018, like I would go on the radio and be like, man, this is like there's not like a real big margin for success. And meanwhile, you see the Colts, and the Colts are playing a certain way. They're not going to win the division, but they're peaking at the right time and they're playing their best ball. And they come to NRG in the first round of playoffs, they kick your ass, you know? And it's like, well, that's what we were talking about. You know, the offensive line wasn't consistent. You weren't running the rock. Defense wasn't making plays. I think this team has potential to do that. Just the offensive line. Like if you're hoping for the offensive line, then I just don't know why you're hoping that at this point. It's not there. There's other ways to figure stuff out.
You can hope that
I'm just saying, like if you're hoping for that, I just don't know why you would hope that.
You can hope that they get better. You just can't hope. It'd be foolish to hope that they turn into worth their money and worth their investment.
Right. That would be. I mean, you would have one of the best offensive lines in the league if that happened.
Yeah, there's got to be. I'm trying to think. There's probably an offensive line that is. I mean, well, the Eagles is probably the best example. They've got two guys on their second contract to tackle, and then they've got a bunch of draft picks on the interior, and they maul everybody.
Yeah. Swarm in the super chat.
You ain't never hate.
Swarm. Dietology, blue jersey, NW. Does Stroud need to hit check downs? What is NW? NWO? What?
Blue jersey, NW. Does Stroud need to hit check downs?
Yeah. What does that mean? What is NW? I'm looking like a dumbass. I'm sure it's like something really common.
I don't understand what he's saying. I think we're missing some context here.
Does Stroud need to hit checkdowns? I guess. I mean, I didn't like see him missing much. There was one play, and it actually ended up working Well, he was a little bit late hitting Schultz. I think it might have been the play where Schultz kind of went inside the goal line a little bit. It seemed like he was a little bit late. But there was another one where he went past the check down and he just found Nico for 23.
Well, that's what it was. We were sitting next to Texans cap, and he goes, "Oh, he has Diggs," and then he hit Nico for 23. And he goes, "That works too."
Yeah. I want to get to that in a second too, because I think if we're gonna do the Jeff Van Gundy, don't ignore in victory what you would not ignore in defeat. I think there is something that I think I'm not critical of DeMeco's body language. I think he did a good job dialing up blitzes, but I think he did make one mistake that could have cost him the game. We'll get to that, as well as something that DeMeco needs to do to send a message to the team. That'll be in the next 20 minutes. We appreciate y'all for coming through. Patrick in the super chat says, how would y'all have felt last year about yesterday's ugly win? Sorting out frustrations due to this year's heightened expectations versus bad football. That's a good question. I think I do think the mindset has changed for sure. And I think that's a good thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think that's anything you got to be upset about. I think it's a good thing that you've kind of raised the bar to where, I don't want to call it style points, but you're kind of thinking, short term you win and then long term. But yeah, I definitely think it probably, like, this point in the year, although their 2 wins early last year in the first 4 weeks were pretty damn impressive. The Pittsburgh and Jacksonville win. They found what they gutted out some, but their first 2 wins of the year last year around this time were complete thrashings.
Yeah, well, I mean, you were hoping for a bit more of a bounce back coming into this matchup because they had showcased last year that they could do that. And this wasn't as bounce back as you would have liked. You talked about the Jacksonville win. That was coming off Indy at home. Didn't look good. They mauled Jacksonville. And then I think this one's a little bit closer to New Orleans last year, where they won 20-13. New Orleans had a chance to win the game at the end. Derek Carr played terrible in that game. Like, this very much feels like the New Orleans one. You're happy to get the win, a lot to clean up. You grind it out. You're good enough. You move on. They moved on into the bye week and then came out of the bye week flat as hell. But no bye week and no flat opportunities here. You got Buffalo coming to town.
Derek asked, what media member has the courage to ask LT about his record? I'll ask him about that. I'll ask him about that tomorrow. Or Wednesday. No, that's fine. I have no.
That's an old Belichick thing.
Yeah, I'll ask him. Yeah, that's not a problem.
And Edelman's told the story probably 100 times. It's one of his clips that makes the rounds probably 3 times a year during football season, where Belichick yelled at him because he had red gloves and it was like an iffy hold. And he's like, if you had white gloves on, they don't call that because the opposing team was wearing white.
Yeah, I'll ask him. I mean,
fucking red gloves. It's like it's what he does.
David White, it's almost as if Nick Caserio knows what he was doing drafting Blake Fisher for the future for all those fans that were left dumbfounded. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I didn't anticipate them drafting a tackle, but yeah, I think we might look back at the Blake Fisher pick and say that was pretty smart by Nick. I agree with you on that. And look, he had his pick of the litter when it came to draft picks at that point at the tackle spot. And some of those guys that went after Fisher have seen action and haven't looked very good. Not that Fisher's looked good in his action. He wasn't good yesterday in the 20 snaps in for Laramie, but I'll be monitoring Fisher versus those other guys to see if he jumped in at the right time and grabbed the right guy. So other good stuff from the game, I would say. I look at the defensive stand where there was a PBU by Petrie and a PBU by Murray where they kind of just elevated their play.
That was Jacksonville's last real drive.
Yeah, and it was the one they needed it. I mean, they needed every second of that. So
yeah, first down probably ends the game.
I think Agumbawale played his best game offensively as a Texan. I think he deserves credit. I think the tight ends were good. I think they did what they were called upon to do. Schultz and Stover. Schultz made me nervous that he was going to fumble at the end, but he was fine. He had it on lock. I think the receivers performed as good as you could realistically expect the receivers to perform.
Were you surprised that it was Robert Woods that got the lion's share of Tank Dell's opportunities? I was.
You
I
thought
was
it was going to
surprised.
be Mechie?
I thought it was going to be Xavier Hutchinson.
Okay.
And I wonder if the special teams gaffe, because Hutchinson was a part of it, he ran into Sims. I wonder if the special teams gaffe then affected Hutchinson's offensive opportunities. The guy that had been on the field, they'd had Woods out there a little bit when Tank was available, but Hutchinson had been on the field more than Woods when Tank was available. Tank's out, I would have thought more Hutchinson. It was primarily Robert Woods, but Xavier Hutchinson was involved in the early game special teams disaster, and so I do wonder if that affected his offensive playing time. You're punished. We're going to put Robert Woods on the field instead of you.
Yeah. TA says we were questioning Dare being on this team.
Not me.
Yeah, I thought his roster spot was the safest. Now, you can make a case that maybe you need more dynamic options, but I thought his roster spot was the safest. And hey, in the pass game and stuff, that's clearly the guy. Maxwell on the super minus Sims. The score was 24-13, not minimizing our struggles, but if we can clean up bonehead mental errors, we can compete, but ceiling is lowered. Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, we'll get to that in a second. 15 minutes or something that they got to do. And I don't think it's an overreaction. But there's one thing that I really do think that DeMeco made a big mistake in yesterday. And fortunately they were able to overcome it, but the clock management, I think it left a little bit to be desired at the end of the first half. And it could have cost him a game. It was a 4-point decision by DeMeco Ryans. They had 3 timeouts left after the 2-minute warning. First play of the 2-minute warning, there was a 23-yard gain to Nico Collins. Nico Collins gets into Jags territory, and the Texans, rather than calling a timeout, they let 45 seconds go off the clock. So the next snap doesn't come till 1:15. Mm-hmm. Now you end up kind of nickel and diming your way to the 11-yard line. And by the time you get to the 11-yard line, you really don't have much time, to the point where on first down, you really only had time to run a play and kick a field goal. Had they used that timeout earlier, rather than having to settle for 3 points and take the timeout with you from the 11-yard line, they could have had probably 2 shots at the end zone. And that's the difference between 7 points and 3 points. And you were able to overcome it against the Jags, but you can't do that against Buffalo. You can't do that against Kansas City. You can't do that late in the season. I thought that was something that could have been extremely costly by DeMeco. And I thought it was, and immediately as soon as the Nico thing happened, you're saying timeout, because you can see that the clock's going. There should not be a 45-second play when you have 3 timeouts inside the 2-minute warning and you're driving. There's no excuse for that. And you took the timeout with you into the locker room. That's not good.
I'm going to play a role here, and I'm going to ask a question. Would DeMeco Ryans defend the way they operated?
No.
By saying,
no.
Well, if we didn't get 2 penalties, the train would have been moving on time. We'd have had plenty of time.
I don't think he would, because you didn't know that you were going to get those 2 penalties before you.
I could understand. I didn't understand.
You're saying if they don't get the penalties, then they score sooner, and there's no problem.
No. What I'm saying is if they don't get the penalties, and they're in the red zone, red area, extended red area, whatever the hell you want to call it, quicker, and they use those timeouts down there. The 45 seconds for the play is I don't understand that.
You got 3 timeouts, man.
They also burned 20 seconds. They went from 1st and 20 to 2nd and 6. They burned 20 seconds, between snaps on that one, where they probably could have used a timeout. So
it's 2 plays. I mean, it's 2 plays that, I mean, if you have to kick a field goal on 2nd down, you should completely reevaluate the way you did things, no matter what.
This has been a 4-game issue, though. We haven't liked the end of half offense very much through the first 4 games.
Yeah, this was bad, and it could have been worse, but they ended up.
Is this? We may need to ask to find out. Is this DeMeco not putting the pedal down, or is this Bobby?
I don't know. I think they put the pedal down. I mean, they're always trying to steal points at the end of the half. They might not do it right, but like if there's 50 seconds left, they're calling a timeout to get the rock back. So it's not like they just take it to the house. It's not like they're taking knees. That's the thing is
They're far more comfortable burning time on offense than when they're on defense.
Correct. Yeah, I agree with that. More super chats. Max says minus. Yeah, okay, that we already got that minus Sims. Ricky, Texans organization glazes over Metch all the time. Where was he at? I think he had one catch for 7 yards.
I mean, they didn't put him on the field a bunch.
David White says Dare is mad. He had a Noah B game. This is all. I don't know. It was a Noah B game. Maybe.
He had a couple of nice plays. I mean, Dare Gumbawale is consistent in what they ask him to do. I mean, they asked him to be the third running back and pass block a little bit. He's consistent. He does that.
Yeah, he does his thing. Zach says Hunter and Will were quiet this game. Yeah, the sack production hasn't been there. I'm not concerned about Hunter and Will. I think they'll figure it out. I also think they play better than their stats, and all the coaches will say that. But, yeah, you would like to see them start getting some sacks, maybe this week against Josh Allen. How about that? Can we get the scoop on Harris County coming back? I'll ask DeMeco today. I would not bet on Buffalo, but, I mean, stranger things have happened. I wouldn't bet on it, but I'll ask DeMeco today for an update. He probably won't give it. But I'll try to ask it in the form of like, hey, is Christian Harris going to practice this week? Something like that. I'll try to get not what's the status.
Christian Harris is the new. So last year it was Juice Scruggs, and it was Wednesday. You know, media shuffle in there, and the first thing you're looking for was 70 practicing. Was he activated for practice? And for the longest time, Scruggs was not, and then there was no answers on why. This Wednesday, you shuffle in, there's 48 practicing. Like, I don't anticipate that he will be. I don't anticipate that
he's walking, right?
Yes,
looking good. Yeah, he's.
Well, why? I mean, yes, you would. He didn't have any sort of.
No, I'm just saying he's walking. I mean, that's good. He looks like he could.
That's the first step into running is walking.
I mean, he looks like I could at least ask him to go to the mall.
Quick, Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson, pressure rate update, 3rd and 4th in the league.
Look at that. The lovely pressure rate. Pressure. Yeah. Do you think there's any like BS with pressure rate and like win rate? I've never really dove. I really never really dove into the pressure rate and all that. Do you think there's any chance that it's like misleading? I don't. I think they're good players.
Oh, I don't either, because I mean the number one in the league's Myles Garrett. We know he's really good. You know.
Yeah, that's true.
You hold on.
All right.
Hold on. I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you for pressure rate for just this week. They were not super high. Danielle Hunter checked in at 20th in the league this week. You know, for just this week. That's on the season I initially gave you, but just this week. Danielle Hunter checked in at 20th. And Will Anderson, not in the top 70 as I can see it.
Okay. Well, we'll have to keep an eye on that. Jesse F. Super Chat. Thank you, sir. Pass rush is limited with all the soft coverage. How many wide receiver screens, hitches, and slants are we going to watch every week? I don't know. I mean, I
mean, look, there were some moments where this is a fat Jaguars offensive line. Like, they're not nimble. Like, I would give like a more mobile, nimble group of tackles a better chance on a play in, play out basis versus Hunter and Anderson. But there were some times where Cam Robinson and Harrison just locked their guys up. Like there were some times where Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter did not win a one-on-one against Robinson, against Harrison. And that happens. That's what happens when your tackles can, on occasion, play above average.
All right, so there's one thing that DeMeco needs to do to send a message, and I think this is.
I've been waiting all morning for this. I saw this on the prep sheet for the show. I've been waiting all morning for this.
You got to cut Steven Sims.
Oh,
And no, I mean, you have to cut Steven Sims, or you have to make him not active for a long, long time, because let me explain this. You hear a lot of like talk about, what are they going to do about penalties? And in some ways, there's probably some things they can do. And in a lot of ways, we don't want to admit it, but there's not a lot of things that they can do to just send the message. DeMeco insists that a message was sent this week, and then they go back on the field and the penalties are still there. There's some people who say, well, you got to bench Laramie Tunsil. You got to really bench them. You got to find these guys. It's not realistic. Okay. Laramie Tunsil is too valuable to your football team, and he's too important to what you're trying to do, what you need to do. And regardless of how much we bitch about it, he's one of your best players. Steven Sims is not. Steven Sims is a guy who only does one thing, and when he doesn't even do it very well, we're okay with it because there's not as much consequence. Steven Sims, the turnover that Steven Sims had is as bad as it gets for a player. It's as bad as it gets. There's no possible scenario where you have a worse turnover. It comes the play after DeMeco Ryans dials up one of his best blitzes, and you force Trevor Lawrence to sail it over Kirk's head because Al-Shaair is there. CJ Stroud's about to trot onto the field. You give them a free 7 points, which could have been the difference in the game. Then you go back in the game and you pick up a 15-yard penalty. And some people could say, well, that was tic-tac. It doesn't matter. You're Steven Sims. The message needs to be sent. And I think a case was made even last week, and we were talking about this last week, that he's not providing anything in the return game. So you don't really need Steven Sims. He's taken up a roster spot. Maybe you can have Mechie active. Maybe you can have maybe you put Des King out there, and Des King is like insurance at the nickel position. And he's also been a Pro Bowl return man in the past. We've seen Des King have success returning punts. There's not a lot sometimes that you can do when it comes to penalties and sending a message to your team, but I think cutting Steven Sims would be one of those things. And I go back to the Jimmy Johnson philosophy, and I brought this up on 610, and I think they're still using it because I went and dug up the audio and stuff. I think I heard them talking about it on the post game yesterday. There was some guy who wasn't in shape, and he fell asleep in a meeting, and Jimmy Johnson cut his ass on the spot. Never heard of him. I don't know who he is. He cut his ass on the spot. And Jimmy said that someone asked Jimmy Johnson, like at whatever the newspaper was, well, what the hell would you do if that were Troy Aikman or Michael Irvin falling asleep in that meeting? And he said, I would have woke him up. So there, you need to send a message. Steven Sims doesn't do much for you anyways, and you're kind of in a desperate situation where you have an undisciplined squad. This is the message that needs to be sent. It sucks. I like Steven Sims. He seems like a nice guy. He's fought his way to be on this team, but quite frankly, even the turnover aside, he doesn't provide much in the return game. He can't even do the bare minimum. And I think a lot of mistakes are worse than others. You're not going to cut CJ Stroud for throwing a pick six. You're not going to cut CJ Stroud for turning the rock over. But Steven Sims, I think you can send kind of a message that, hey, you don't do your job. And obviously it's not true with some of these big guys, but like the offensive linemen, I don't see these guys in jeopardy of being cut. But you don't do your job, there's consequences. That guy right there that you really liked, whose locker was right there, he's no longer with us because he almost cost us a damn ball game by making 2 mental mistakes. I think you got to do that. Sucks, but I think that would be the right decision for DeMeco Ryans and Nick Caserio at this point.
That's send one hell of a message, that's for sure. One hell of a message. Could you do it and still have the message come across without being that drastic? Sure, but to your point, the necessity of the risk and reward of what you bring to the table, I mean, it's if he was awesome and dynamic as a returner, maybe you bench him for a week or two, he's not. And special teams is, and like Frank Ross will tell you every week, and he mentions this, the goal for special teams, the very first thing is take care of the football. And that and Sims didn't take care of the football at his first opportunity to touch it. He didn't take care of the football. And it doesn't matter why he didn't take care of the football, because there's somebody else that can do that job. They had Robert Woods replace him. They had Robert Woods replace him on punt return initially, and they had J.J. Taylor replace him on kickoff initially, right after that mistake. And there's someone else that could do like he is far from irreplaceable. So it's drastic. And you can send, I mean, hey, oh, he's a good locker room guy. We're like, okay, cut him and put him on the practice squad. Like, if he matters that much to the locker room morale. But as far as on the roster, 53, you only get 48 guys active on game day. What can you do for me? Not a lot, and you make mistakes.
Yeah, I think it's a statement that is necessary. Quite frankly, I don't know that even if you're not going to do that, I don't want him out there anymore. I know that Tank Dell got hurt. I would rather have Tank Dell back there. A mix of Tank Dell and Robert Woods or King or something like that. Like I would rather have that.
I just feel like special teams coverages are so good right now. Just put the guy back there that can catch the football every time.
Yeah,
and he doesn't have. If Robert Woods gets you,
that was
yards,
a wild muff, dude. That was a wild muff.
Well, he should have just let it go. Like if it bounces out of bounds at the 2, okay, they got a good punter. Like Frank Ross said last week, he's a good punter. Like you should have let it go. You were too close to the point where you should have even been fielding it.
Zach says Steven Sims is a bum. If he's not muffing punts, he's running backwards for negative yards. Yeah, I like the guy. I mean, he seems like a good dude. It's just he doesn't.
Well, here's another aspect. How many times have we come into a season and we've talked about how, yeah, actually 10, 15 yards here or there could kind of sink this Texans team. Like there have been a lot of those teams. I feel like the Bill O'Brien teams, they actually needed a little bit of help on special teams here and there. You got CJ Stroud. What do you need 10 yards on a punt return for? He makes it up in a one pass to DeMeco. Special teams, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's not important because you saw how important it is when you can't hold on to the damn football. But just put the guy back there that can catch the football. If Robert Woods gets you 4 yards, cool. If he doesn't get you 4 yards because he fair catches the damn thing every time, cool.
Well, the other thing is, like, if we're talking about roster spots and roster spots are valuable, like, if one of these receivers gets hurt, okay, Steven Sims isn't even going to play receiver like Mechie is. So if you have guys on your team that can just catch the ball on punt return, like Steven Sims, like that's almost like the best case scenario for Steven Sims is that you catch the ball. If you have multiple guys that can catch the ball, like the emergency situation, like the snowball effect that inevitably happens in the NFL, like is Steven Sims going in there? I won't name names or anything like that, but like, is he going in there and playing slot receiver? No, he's not. Like John Mechie is. And I don't think John Mechie is like God's gift to anything, but I do know this. If Steven Sims is active and John Mechie's not, then your receiving core is worse with Sims than it is Mechie. So what exactly is he doing? Like all he does is return punts and he doesn't do it well.
This is probably something that's lost on you because I bet you haven't seen the movie, but a lot of people have. Office Space, when they ask the guy, what is it exactly you do here? Steven Sims is like, I try to catch the punt.
Try to catch the ball.
Try? That guy over there does catch it. What do you mean try?
Try to catch the ball. But yeah, I think it's a necessary message at this point. I think it's necessary. And quite frankly, I don't think it's dramatic. I don't know. Like even if they're not going to cut him, what is he good for? What has he done? We're 4 games into the season. Like Steven Sims, he has, what is it? I think the return when he came back in was his best of the season. The 10 yards that was his best return of the season, right? Had to be.
Probably.
Yeah.
You hear so much about it's 53 and then there's 48 on game day and rolls and this. You've laid it out. You laid it out really well.
If you have a badass return man, I think there's value there. Like if that's all he does and he's really good at it, okay.
The Texans are 30th in average punt return, by the way.
Like if Jacoby Jones muffs a punt, Jacoby Jones is going to return punts next week because he's freaking good at it.
Yeah, RIP.
Yeah, rest in peace, Jacoby. But like if Steven Sims does it, you're gone. Bye-bye. See you later.
It is not overreactionary.
I felt sorry for him. Yesterday. I know it wasn't fun for him. I know he probably didn't sleep last night, but hey, sorry, man. Like they got to send a message somehow. I think that's the way to do it.
They average 3.9 yards per punt return.
Dude. I mean, really? 3.9?
Yeah.
How fast is he too? Because he runs like he runs a 4.2, like when he runs backwards.
He's got legendary Dion speed.
Dude, I don't know. I mean, that's what you think. The way he goes backwards, like you see him going backwards, like, oh, he might have something. Then all of a sudden, it's a 6-yard loss.
All right. I mean, you've laid out a pretty. If this
you want Steven Sims returning punts next week?
No, I want Robert Woods back there. Just fair catch it or let it go into the end zone. My
No. What about Des King?
That's fine. You want Des King back there.
I don't know if
fine.
they like him on defense though, but yeah,
that's fine. You want Des King back there? Sure. You want not Cam Akers, but he's kickoff maybe.
No, but there's multiple layers to it, and we're giving Steven Sims a lot of time. Like I'm sorry, but I mean Steven Sims would be 2 hours if they'd lost this game. Like
handed him 7 points.
I mean, we would be sitting here saying Steven Sims cost you a game. Now you're 1 game within the Jags. You're tied with the Colts, and you got Buffalo coming to town, and you're amidst the pillow fight of the AFC South. That's how close Steven Sims was to screwing this up. But there's multiple layers to it because he doesn't do anything. Like if with Des King, if the corners go down, you can at least throw him out there. With John Mechie, you can at least throw him out there with the receivers. Like there's no insurance policy to it either. Like it's not even a safe. It's actually the most unsafe roster spot that you have is Steven Sims. Seriously, like if Steven Sims can't, it is the most unsafe, irrational roster spot you can have. It's basically like flying on Southwest, and you can only take 2 bags, and you're staying somewhere for like 3 weeks, and you just decide, you know what, I'm going to take this bag full of junk. Like that's what Steven Sims is. Like that's what
junk.
I mean, like what good is Steven Sims with the roster spot? Oh, he can catch a punt.
You could better serve the roster spot a bunch of different ways. Even
we'd be having this. I think this discussion's even valid, even if he doesn't muff the punt yesterday. Like I think this discussion is even if he's just doing what he's been doing, which is catching punts. I think this, and sometimes losing yards on it. I think this discussion's valid even before yesterday.
I've got
last week.
I've got your roster move right here, Landry. The Houston Texans have waived kick returner / wide receiver Steven Sims, and they've activated defensive tackle Kurt Heinisch from the injured reserve.
Thank you.
There's your roster move, and then
practice squad, Steven, come back.
And then it's sort of disguised as, well, Heinisch is ready. We got to get him more. We had too many wide receivers. Heinisch is ready.
There you go. Thank you.
It's pretty. I mean, it's easy sell. You don't look like a. And then if he's a locker room, if the guys love him in the locker room, practice squad, and you got to get better.
979 says we fell in love with Sims over one play. I assume you're talking about the punt return against the Ravens.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I was all over Steven. What's that? Hold on. Oh, that's the boss. He says we've met our Steven Sims quota. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on now. Reaction Monday with SNL.
So you brought up Desmond King, and there was something from yesterday that jumped off the page when I started looking at it and paying attention to it, that I do wonder how sustainable it is. Kalen Bullock, Eric Murray, Jalen Petrie, Kamari Lassiter, and Derek Stingley. Yet again, the starters in the secondary played 100% of the snaps.
How are they doing that?
I have no. We got to ask DeMeco about this. They're playing 100% of the snaps in the secondary.
They're literally playing 2 linebackers, and they're playing Jalen Petrie as the 3rd linebacker. And maybe this is like we said this, like maybe this is just a reaction to the Harris and the cards you've been dealt. I don't know how they're playing so few guys in the secondary, and it hasn't cost them. Now it does kind of feel like Petrie's being sniffed out now, and I think that's going to be a theme. It's going to be more and more difficult. He's going to have to step up in certain situations. There's going to be clear situations where he's outmanned, like I think he was yesterday in a lot of instances. And Lawrence missed a really big play that would have had Petrie out there. But I don't know how in the hell. I've never seen this few corners playing ever.
They play two corners. They played two corners, and yesterday they played two safeties, and then they played Petrie at Petrie's position because nobody else really plays Petrie's position.
And it's not even no Ward. It's not no Ward. It's like they're playing literally two corners, even when Ward is playing. Like they're not playing a lot of corners.
So the fact that they don't play a backup cornerback, one, I don't think they have a backup outside guy. Like that guy is, I guess, Troy Pride, but not Pride. Sorry, excuse me, D'Angelo Ross. But we saw what happened last year when they put him on the field against Cleveland. So they don't have a backup outside guy. That was supposed to be Jeff Okudah. He's on IR. So they don't have a guy to go to. And part of the reason you don't see guys travel is because they don't come off the field at cornerback. And it's too much going across in addition to up and down. So that's part of the reason you don't always see Stingley travel from that spot as well. But yesterday, I mean, MJ Stewart's like they like him. He's an okay player. Like I expected him to at least spell Kalen Bullock or Eric Murray for a moment. Murray 100%, Bullock 100%, which, by the way, I was probably not as excited about the Kalen Bullock pick as a lot of people. He's been really nice so far through 4 games. I guess you would have had MJ Stewart on the field instead of him if you hadn't picked him. But he's been nice. But I don't know how long this is, and maybe this is just the way they have to play until Harris is back. But this can't be sustainable for a season. It's not.
No, it's impressive that they're able to be 3-1 doing it. Honestly, like it's very impressive. Like it's insane. But maybe this kind of adds to the Steven Sims thing too, like you said, where they we surpassed the quota. Where maybe you gotta figure out the situation there. Sports Talk with D asks, do you feel that Bobby Slowick's head coach status has dropped?
I mean, nobody's looking for their head coach in week 5, week 4. He's going to get interviews.
Yeah, I just don't look at the Slowick thing as, I mean, if we're saying how bad the offensive line is and we're talking about the limitations, I just don't know. It's hard for me to criticize Bobby at the moment. It might arrive. It's just hard for me at the moment.
Let's get to Gustavo, and then I did a little Stoots stats and information research.
You ain't never hate.
Swarm.
How's Jamal Hill? Is he any good? Maybe give him some playing time. No.
Okay.
I would say no.
Answered that.
Was that a good answer?
You probably a little bit more than you needed, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think that he's a good option with what they got.
Okay,
go ahead.
You want a little Stoots stats and information here?
Stoots stats and information brought to you by nobody.
So brought to you by Could Be You. If your business would like to sponsor, send us an email. So people were very critical of first down runs. And that's a big Bobby Slowick criticism point, is first down runs. Okay. So I went through it. I tracked every first down that the Texans had yesterday.
Oh, wow.
They had 36 first downs that they ran a play on. Okay. 3 of those were penalties, and 2 of them were pass plays where Stroud ended up scrambling. So I'm not counting that as a rushing play because it was a called pass play and he scrambled. So that leaves us with 31 plays. Okay. 17 passes, 14 runs.
Okay.
On first down.
Yeah.
So they threw the ball more than they ran the ball on first down.
Okay.
Most people would tell you they didn't do that yesterday, but they did.
Okay.
They ended up with 156 yards on the passing plays. They ended up with 50 yards on the running plays. Here were the runs on first down. 1, 1, 1, 2-0-7-2-4-3-0-15-0-8-6. Like that early, the first 11, they were averaging less than 2 yards per carry on first down. Now, that's not just Bobby. That's not just that's everything. That's the running backs. That's the O-line. That's Bobby. Like, that's not sustainable. Now, obviously, it hit later in the game because they had a couple of nice plays, and Dare was one of the rushes late. Akers had a 15-yard run. But, like, you can't just say, throw it every time on first down. That's not sustainable. They threw it more than they ran it. The throwing was more successful. How often was the throwing successful because they surprised the other team when they thought they were going to run it? That's up for debate. But it's not just as simple as, stop running it on first down. Like, I don't think it's as simple, but they have got to be better on first down when they decide to run it.
There were a couple times where they made up for it on second, though.
Sure.
Yeah, there was the before the Diggs touchdown, there was I think an 8 or 9 yard second down run by Akers. There was another one where he had 7. It almost seemed like they were running the ball better on second down than they were first. I don't have the stats to back that up, but
there was a 2nd and 16 where Akers had a 9-yard run.
Yeah,
and that gives them 3rd and 7.
Before the Diggs TD, so they run with Akers for 1, then they run with Akers for 5. He gets 6. 3rd and 4, they get DeMeco for 18, and then they get down in the red zone and Akers for 1, and then Akers for 8. So there were two downs where he had 1 yard on first, and then he had 5 and 8 on second. Do with that what you want. I don't know that. I mean, that's just.
Like, I think there's necessary context to. Oh well, Bobby just lights first down on fire. Well, he doesn't actually, because they had a lot of pass plays that were super successful on first down. It's like he doesn't actually do that, but there are some run plays that aren't successful on first down. And then to your point, sometimes he goes back to the run and it pays off on second down. So were they in 3rd and long too much? Were they in 2nd and long too much? Yes. But that's the nature of having a poor offensive line too. That's not just Bobby.
Yeah, it's tough to criticize play calling when, like, the majority of frustration, I don't want to speak for you people, and I do mean you people, the majority of frustration, I think, with the fan base is the offensive line. I think the offensive line is what's the most frustrating, and I think it's valid. I think it's a valid thought, and I think DeMeco kind of has said as much too, talking about the penalties and lining up and all that. So if you say that, it's kind of hard to just overly criticize the offensive play calling.
Well, you're going to have Bobby bitchers every week. Every week. It doesn't matter how good or bad, you're going to have people that bitch about Bobby every week. I just feel like there needs to be a lot more context added to the conversation than, he ran too much on first down. Well, they actually threw more on first down than they did run. Okay, is some of that because they got behind the sticks because of this or because of a penalty? Okay, maybe. But he threw like you want him to be Mike Leach? That ain't gonna work in the NFL. Where the
Rest in peace.
And look, Mixon's gonna fix some of this, but he ain't fixing all of it. But Mixon's gonna fix some of this. Like some of these runs that J.J. Taylor makes the wrong decision, Mixon's not going to make the wrong decision. J.J. Taylor gets, tackled because he's 5'5". Mixon doesn't get tackled. Mixon's going to make Bobby more right over the course of the season than he has been when he's had to give the ball to Cam Akers, Dare, and J.J. Taylor.
Are the Jags dead? It's a question.
Yes.
Did the Texans kill the Jags? Are the Jags dead?
Yes, you had
out for the Jags today.
You had the head coach go up there and basically say the quarterback didn't make enough plays.
I want to get your reaction to this tweet. This is from Seth Payne. Seth Payne said this about the Texans, quote, "Win or lose, every one of you who was nervous about this team acting too much like they'd already arrived was 100% on the nose." That's rat poison right there, my friend.
So Seth's saying they ate the rat poison. That's why they're bad.
I think he thinks that maybe they've arrived, or they felt that they'd arrived. I don't know. Rat poison.
I mean, the O-line, maybe.
You don't believe that? You don't believe there's rat poison going on?
I don't believe it's a team-wide issue.
Okay. You think it's the O-line?
The O-line probably that way a little bit.
Okay.
Would you say that there's another position group that thought like they were hot stuff and has underperformed? I mean, CJ Stroud is quick to tell you that he had good moments in a, like, even CJ's not doing the, hey, don't forget we had, we did this well. Like he does that losses sometimes. He hadn't done that yet. I don't think there's another position group that you could say, like, the top two running backs have been missing for 2 weeks.
The what?
The top two running backs have been missing for 2 weeks.
One of the top two.
I'm telling you the way that they operate. Running back one is Joe Mixon, and then the Texans operate with Dameon Pierce as running back two.
You think when Pierce comes back, Akers is inactive?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I don't either.
No.
I
have no idea when Damien's coming back. He hadn't even practiced yet.
I don't think so. So this was brought up. It was kind of a popular topic, kind of a polarizing topic. Dom in Jersey's asking the question. Can you talk about the crowd a little? It's getting embarrassing. Stadium doesn't ever get filled or loud till later on in the game. Do you have any thoughts on the crowd?
The crowd has been the same crowd that it has been for basically the entirety of this organization's existence.
Yeah.
They do not arrive for kickoff like they arrive for middle of the first quarter.
Okay.
That has been an issue with this crowd since the beginning of this organization's time in this town.
Okay.
It doesn't get full at kickoff unless the team is on a roll and they're extremely awesome, or it's a primetime night game. And even then, sometimes the primetime night games are a little slow getting people in.
Yeah, I think it's as empty as it's. I'd saw Derek. He said it's a league-wide thing. No, it's not that empty. League-wide. I don't care how many games you go to. It's not that empty. I'm not one of these people who says get your ass in your seat. Like, fans can do whatever they want to do. Like, if you're out there tailgating and stuff, I don't blame you. Like, do whatever the hell you want to do. I do find it does have to suck though for the production staff and the players to put together, like, that should be an elite like production, and it's just all for nothing. Like, nobody's appreciating the whole mariachi band, Toro going out there and that whole screen. I think they need to turn out the lights when they do introductions. I think at the very least they need to turn out the lights. We saw that in Indy. There might still be a glare with the way that the stadium is right now, but I think they at least need to turn out the lights. But let's just be honest. Like, whoever designed the way to get to the stadium and the roads really all the way from 610 up is an absolute idiot. Like, they don't improve the logistics of getting to the game. It's not good. Like, it's not as easy to get out of your car at NRG as it is at a lot of places. Like, it's just not. Like, Kirby, you just have a bunch of restaurants, and then you have to go down, and then when you go down, you can turn here, but you can't turn there, and you can turn there, but you can't turn there, and this parking's here. Like, it's not very well laid out.
288's a disaster. That's something that the Texans can't control. The 288's a joke. The way that all that construction, that's been years. It's always been an issue. So coming from that way is a big issue. Coming around 610, around the Galleria, always traffic. That 59-610 interchange, it's not any better. And then stuff just gets bottled up there right around the stadium. There's only a certain way, like the way that the area is built. You know what would help is if you had a giant parking lot next to NRG where the Astrodome is, because then you could funnel a lot of people from another way. But the way that the area is set up, you have to funnel so many people into small parts around the stadium. It makes your non-tailgaters late for the game.
Yeah, it is. It just kind of is what it is. Yeah, would turning the Astrodome into a parking lot help? Maybe I don't know. I mean, it's just.
I think it would relieve.
Weird.
I think it would relieve some pressure from where the traffic shows up. Yes.
Yeah, I mean it's a big ass just nothing right there. I did. Yeah, because once you go down Kirby, you have to. It's a joke. You almost have to loop all the way. You have to loop all the way around to get like to the teal and purple lots, and then you have all that. So maybe it's logistics. Maybe it's just kind of a thing. But yeah, that's just kind of what it is with the crowd.
Like
so,
if you had, and I'm just spitballing here, if you had the dome as parking, pretend the Astrodome wasn't there and it was all parking, you could force traffic to not go down Main one way and only get to the yellow lot one way and only get to the dome, theoretical dome parking one way. And then that would relieve a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Does it?
Damn it. I'm going to be a city planner. I'm going to run for office and fix this.
Does it bother you at all?
I get there super early, so it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, you too. Yeah, I get there too. It's just it is kind of wild, and I know that CJ has talked about it, and there's like a big push, but I'm not one of these. Like I see some fans. There was a big battle yesterday in the post game with this fan thinks you're not a true fan if you're not in your seat, and this fan is a season ticket holder and likes to hang out in the parking lot. I don't think it's like you can do whatever you want to do. Someone says leave the Astrodome alone. It's a historical monument. I hope you're joking. It's actually making it look really bad right now. It looks really bad. It's actually insulting to the Astrodome that's up. Like people from out of town come and say, what is that?
If parking was just a Texans issue, like the flow of traffic and stuff was just a Texans issue, like I would say, okay, well, they need to fix it. But it's an issue for rodeo. It's an issue for concerts. It's an issue for everything. It's the area of town that it's in.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad.
It's an issue.
It's
bad.
An
issue.
GC says resellers are making it way expensive for some average fans. Talking about the ticket cost. Well, I mean, the tickets are sold, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the tickets are accounted for, and then people like that's the thing is it gets full. It's just not full at kickoff.
It's just kind of where it is, man.
It'll be full for Sunday Night Football though when the Lions are in town.
Yeah, and it was kind of full for the Bears.
Yeah, it'll be full for Sunday Night Football.
So biggest outlook looking forward with the Buffalo Bills. Do you have anything else that you want to add to the Jags?
Hold on, I'm sure there's one thing I didn't get to. We talked about the Petrie thing and how they look. This is one of the first teams that I feel like really put their best guy in a position where the safeties had to cover him. And the Jags did that with Brian Thomas Jr. a couple of times, which, by the way, he's pretty freaking good. Like he's gonna be nasty. But they put him in the slot so that Murray had to cover him on the first touchdown. They put him in the slot a couple of times so that Petrie ended up on him. They moved him around to make sure that the safeties were on him. And I feel like the Jags, put a big sign up that basically was like, hey, these safeties probably not going to be able to cover your best guy the entire game. Murray and Petrie, back-to-back plays late in the game. They made a play, but leading up to that had been advantage Jags when they had ended up in those situations. Yeah. So you've been on Petrie, but they went after Murray in this game as well. So Petrie and Murray as targets for opposing offenses. That's something to monitor going forward. And the Bills got a bunch of guys that they could drop down there in the slot to make it tough.
Yeah, Buffalo. Buffalo's going to be tough, man. And I'm looking at Cook.
One more. And you'll love this. Hey, investing in a backup running back seems to work. Tank Bigsby's pretty good for a backup running back. Damn near won them the football game because ETN got hurt and he was in and out and won 100%. They invested in Bigsby, and the Texans, have not always invested in that backup running back spot.
Yeah, and Cam Akers is doing fine. It's just it almost feels like that should be like a emergency type of situation. If Dameon Pierce were what they thought he was, then that would be a good thing. But he's not, and we'll see what they do with Dameon Pierce. I think it'll be interesting.
One last one. Did you like the challenge by DeMeco?
Yes, I thought it was necessary. I thought it was a necessary challenge. I really did. I wasn't going to criticize it. I couldn't tell what they were going to call it.
I knew it wasn't going to be a fumble, but I thought there was a decent chance that was going to end up incomplete.
Yeah. Did you have a problem with the challenge?
No, I was in favor of the challenge.
But they ended up getting the dub. Now they got Buffalo. Buffalo, by the way, the only unbeaten team in the AFC right now is Kansas City. Texans have the same record as the Buffalo Bills. I didn't watch that game and feel any better or worse about the matchup with the Bills. I looked at that as just kind of one of those games. And Baltimore, with their rough start, they've just kind of cranked it up a notch. And I think Buffalo was just kind of the victim of that. It was just kind of a perfect storm. What do you think? I haven't seen the line yet. What do you think the line should be, Texans versus Bills?
I think it's going to be 2.5. I think there's some look ahead lines. It's 2.5 Bills.
Yeah. The look ahead line is 2.5. Where are you betting on that?
I mean, I would bet the Bills. I am worried about how they're going to handle Josh Allen's mobility. I'm worried about them getting Cook going in the backfield because it felt like they got punched in the mouth and just felt like they couldn't run Cook yesterday. And Baltimore has some guy that they drafted in the first round 3 years ago that I didn't even know was on the team, who's awesome, which they do this all the time. They just end up with a guy. You don't even remember that they drafted him, some linebacker from Penn State 3 years ago. And he's awesome. He's like flying off the edge, sacks. He's, stopping guys short. Baltimore was equipped to handle Buffalo. That's why they handled Buffalo that well. The Texans don't have the same type of ability to handle Buffalo like Baltimore did. So if you're thinking, oh, well, look at what Baltimore did, like the Texans, it ain't the same.
I will say that Mixon does help, though.
Helps a lot.
Yeah, Mixon, like you at least like envision, because you saw how they were running. Derrick Henry, once he cranks it up, it's just a completely different level, and we saw it on that first play. But that Mixon helps a lot, gives you a lot of hope.
And that is one thing that I do wonder if Mixon is back, is as healthy as he's going to be, because like it seems at this point like 100% health for Mixon probably out of the realm of possibility. He's probably going to play with some sort of ding for the rest of the year, I would think. But he's a tough dude. He plays through stuff all the time. This does feel like a Buffalo defense because they are missing so many people. It does feel like a Buffalo defense that if you're on as a rushing attack, you can push them around a little bit, and that helps out your passing attack. We just haven't seen the Texans push anybody around since the first game on the ground. Now, we haven't, was Chicago really good rush defense, and then Mixon was out. So,
yeah,
they could get put because their linebacker situation has fallen apart there in Buffalo.
Yeah, they had to make a lot of tough decisions and get rid of a lot of really good players. They've had Allen playing at MVP caliber level, and he's been carrying them a little bit. GC says, any good DTs on a bad team we can trade for? You get DeMeco Autry back. He's coming back after week 6, so that'll kind of be your addition. You also get Kurt Hinish coming back too, so I think you're getting help on the D line.
Yeah, you should get Hinish. And then, Settle's been okay as a rotational guy.
He's been better than okay. He's been solid. He's been much better than I think we anticipated.
He played a little bit more, I think, because Fadakasi's dealing with the shoulder injury. So I don't think they could put Fadakasi on there out there as much as they wanted to. But yeah, I'm not sitting here feeling like the defensive tackle room is some sort of sieve that's real leaky.
We need Desmond King in that nickel spot for cover wise. I don't know, man. I don't know if they like that idea.
Desmond King had a couple of games last year where he kind of played what Petrie plays now at the end of last year, because he had like one game late in the year we had like 13 tackles, and I was like, oh my gosh, like is he just basically a linebacker at this point? But they don't. If they liked him in coverage, he'd have been the nickel corner to start this year.
I do wonder the snowball effect if Christian Harris comes back. I think there could be like kind of a snowball effect there where we might not even recognize the defense as we know it right now.
I mean, well, they're not going to start playing three linebackers a whole bunch. So, I mean, is Henry just going to get benched?
I bet they play three more.
Sure, they don't play any three linebacker now, so they'll play it a little bit more. But is Henry just going to get? They're not just going to bench Henry. He's playing well.
No, he won't get benched.
Maybe those guys don't have to play 100% of the snaps anymore.
He's done a really good job. What did you think of Stingley and Lassiter yesterday?
Hey, Lassiter,
he got double moved by Thomas, man, and Lawrence missed him.
Yep, he got clicked on that one. It felt like the Jaguars didn't want to challenge those guys because they knew they could go after the safeties. So it felt like they didn't want to consistently challenge Stingley and Lassiter. Stingley had a bad angle on one of those run plays, but nothing too much to report from those two guys.
Yeah, not too much. For sure. And we'll also see, like, it wasn't great though, but Stingley did whiff on a tackle too. I didn't think they were great. I thought it could have been worse with better quarterback play. But it's not, I mean, they weren't bad.
But it could have been worse with better quarterback play. It's like, that's got to be somewhat annoying for the Texans, because probably their line of thinking is we made that guy worse. But it's also Anthony Richardson in week one who missed a couple of really nice plays. And then it's Trevor Lawrence, who hasn't won a start since last year in Houston and has been playing poorly. So go, if you want to say, well, we made the guy play bad, go make a good guy play bad. Because you didn't make Sam Darnold play bad. He roasted.
He's an MVP candidate, sir. You need to put some respect on that. That is an MVP candidate you're talking about. We got to change the way we say Sam Darnold. That's an MVP candidate that is younger than Joe Burrow, my friend.
I didn't disrespect him. I just said you did.
You kind of went back to and I've been a part of this too. They made Sam Darnold look good. Everybody's making Sam Darnold look good right now. He's an MVP candidate.
No, I just said they didn't make Sam Darnold look bad, is what I'm saying. And I was giving him the proper amount of respect, because I said, go make a good quarterback look bad. And they didn't make Sam Darnold look bad. They beat three teams who had bad quarterback play that day. Caleb Williams had a bad day because of pressure.
Yeah, I think they had something to do with that.
They and I'll give them credit for that one. They had pressures on like 31 of 37 snaps or something like that, whatever it was. But Anthony Richardson missed a couple of throws that would have turned the game, and so did Trevor Lawrence. And those are not credit. I'm not crediting the Texans for those missed throws. I'm crediting the poor quarterback play. Yeah,
and fortunately, those guys are in your division, so you feel pretty good about that. And that really is like all this talk about, this mistake and that mistake. You have the quarterback, man. Like if you just put the ball back in his hands, you got a chance. You feel like you have a really, really good chance. That's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of having the franchise quarterback. That's what you got to love. Got to absolutely love it. And we talked about the offensive line, and we started, my expectations for the offensive line are low. I have high expectations for the guys on the edge and at corner. Now, I think you might have to start playing more corners eventually. I don't know that this formula, this recipe for snap count is something that you can practice over the course of an entire season, but I'm holding on to it, and I'll probably hold on to it all year. I still have really, really strong hope for the guys on the edge and the guys at corner.
Oh, I'm not. I mean, there's going to be a game where those four guys, Lassiter, Stingley, Hunter, and Anderson, there's going to be a game where those guys just absolutely take over. And then you're going to add in a little Barnett. You're going to add in Autry when eventually he gets back. I mean, that guy, I mean, he had 10.5 sacks last year. And I know he didn't look good in training camp.
They freaking love him too. The way they talk about it, they freaking love him.
I know he didn't look good in training camp. I wonder if some of that was like, well, I'm getting suspended, so I'm going to miss time, whatever. But they get him back, and you can mix him in with, Anderson and Hunter and dump him down inside, or you could put Anderson inside, have him on the edge with Hunter, and there's a lot more mixing and matching and fun stuff that they can do with the defensive line that's going to make it even better. Because, again, not a great pressure day yesterday for the Texans. Still one of the best pressure teams in football.
Yeah, I think the defense is fine. I think. I mean, there's still the Petrie sniff out factor is just, it's there. Like the teams are starting to see that I can get Jalen Petrie in coverage, and there's really no avoiding it. Like as long as Jalen Petrie is playing safety or he's playing nickel, they are going to find matchups. Like he's going to have to at times guard Christian Kirk. It's really just a matter of holding up. Like there might be an occasional 25-yard gain, but if Jalen Petrie can just scratch and claw like he did yesterday, where maybe Trevor Lawrence does you some favors, maybe you hold up okay, and then at the end of the game on 2nd down and 9 with the Jags trying to milk the clock, you make that one play. That's just kind of what you need from Jalen Petrie, and he gave it to you yesterday. So I think that's good. I don't know how long that's going to be a recipe and how much more coaches start to sniff out number 5 in coverage.
Add everything you said about him, add Murray to the list too. Because back-to-back weeks in the red zone, they found Murray, and they were going at Murray a couple of times too in this one.
Well, last week there was forward too. There was
the Christian Kirk, I think it was like a 14-yard out where Murray just kind of didn't catch all of his footing. It was the play you were talking about where DeMeco was yelling at somebody. You can't see it on the TV, but you saw it on the sidelines. He was trying to motion to somebody on the defense. Something wasn't set up right. It ended up with Murray on Kirk out of the slot. Kirk had
Yeah, I thought he was trying to call a timeout. He didn't call the timeout though.
He had 15. Yeah, I think Kirk had 15 when they needed 12 or something like that. So.
But I mean, 3-1 is good. I mean, I'm not sitting here trying to minimize being 3-1. 3-1's great, man. 3-1's great.
One of the biggest, it's not like you look around the league and you see a bunch of 3-1 teams that are just playing some awesome, incredible level of football where they only have one wart on their record or how they're playing. Like Kansas City's 4-0 and have played a couple of really dicey football games. Buffalo's 3 wins. They handled their business. They got worked yesterday. The Jets stink. The Colts stink. Baltimore lost their first 2. They've come on strong in the past 2. Half the Chargers team is hurt. I'm not looking around saying, man, these teams are playing way better football. They just had 1 or 2 breaks, didn't go their way, and their record's not as good as the Texans. There's a lot of teams playing really crappy football. And they haven't been able to be 3-1.
I'm just always hesitant whenever we start talking about the Chiefs are finding ways to do this and all. I'm always kind of hesitant to really put a lot of stock in that. But I get what you're saying. I'm not taking away from it. I'm always kind of hesitant to do that.
I'll leave the Chiefs out of the conversation. The Buccaneers and Commanders are 3-1.
Yeah.
I would have told you before the year the Texans are way better than both of those teams.
Correct.
So look, CJ Stroud has been basically, I don't want to say promising because that's not what he's doing, but it's very much felt like Stroud and the offense feel like by week 6, week 7, they're going to have a better understanding of what they've got to work through some in-game stuff to get to where they want to be. think the defense probably has a little bit of element to that as well. And it's something that we see in the NFL. That first quarter plus of the season is not the team that you are for the rest of the year. You certainly don't hope that to be the case. Like, there's going to be stuff that gets better because guys are in shape, that you've got film, you can game plan a little bit more. Like, you get better if you have a good coaching staff, and I believe this team does. You get better as the season gets going.
PR3 on the super chat. I don't like the fact Jalen plays so closely, bump and run, give them a cushion like 5 yards, probably be better. I don't have any problem with where he's lining up, especially like with what Jacksonville looked like they were trying to get like the quick outs on him, maybe set something up. But I mean, there's limitations. There's limitations with Petrie and coverage. If he's gonna battle like he did, though, I think you'd be pleased based on realistic expectations with him.
That's the way they play defense right now. I will be, to your point, when Harris gets back, whenever he gets back, he can start practicing this week and come back this week. I don't anticipate that he will, but when Harris gets back, maybe that changes and adds to what they can do as a defense. But we've talked about it. Petrie, and yesterday it was Bullock and Murray, and Lassiter and Stigley. They play 100% of the snaps because that's the way they have to play defense right now. They don't have another option.
Adjustments for teams moving forward when they face the Texans. There's a couple that I want to ask about. Do you think that we get to a point, and I kind of asked this at the front, it is Reaction Monday with SNL, Landry Locker, Cody Stoots. Do you think we get to a point where teams are paying heavy amounts of attention to Nico Collins and basically just saying, hey, Stefon and Tank, figure this out? Do you think we get to that point? I mean, right now we're talking about a guy who's top in the league in yards. He's got more yards through 4 games than Andre Johnson or DeAndre Hopkins ever had. Do you think we get to that point?
Ryan Nielsen, the defensive coordinator for the Jaguars yesterday, should be ashamed of himself because yesterday should have been that day. I mean, you should have made Stefon Diggs beat you yesterday. Yeah, I would not have let Nico Collins beat me if I was the Jaguars defense. I would have made Stefon Diggs beat me. It's tougher when Tank's back, and he probably can be back this week. You know, ribs is iffy. It's probably just a pain management thing for him. It's tougher when Tank's on the field, but I would just sit there every week and make everybody that's not Nico Collins beat me. Like, I would treat him like a stud wide receiver and just put as much.
Can you do that though? Like, that's the question. Like, and that's from a Texans point of view. This is actually good for them. Like, can you do that? Like, are you confident that if Diggs and Tank Dell are just manned up, that's a recipe for success? You think that's even possible?
Well, I'll tell you what's not a recipe for success is putting my cornerback on Nico Collins and letting him eat over the middle. Like,
that's the thing though, is like, is it just one of those things you have to live with? That's the thing. Cause I don't think Nico's getting I don't think he's getting as much attention as like Jefferson gets or Tyreek Hill. But I don't know that you can do it. Although Tyreek Hill does have Jalen Waddle, but Tua and whoever else isn't CJ Stroud and Sam Darnold, as much as I can say he's an MVP candidate, he's not really CJ Stroud. So
look, the Texans would love the opportunity to find out. There's a better chance that Diggs and Dell can't get it done than letting all three try to get it done, which is what teams have approached with through the first 3 weeks when the 3 guys have been on the field.
Do you think that this offense needs more explosiveness? Like, do you think that the return of Tank Dell and perhaps the ability to get more explosiveness? Because I don't think this offense is as explosive as it could potentially be. They have Nico's explosive. Nico's on another level right now. But like, as far as like balanced explosiveness, not one guy. I do feel like they need Tank Dell to be what he was at his best last year. If they're going to overcome the offensive line situation, I think they need a little bit more explosiveness on offense. And I really think the only guy that I look to outside of Nico is Tank Dell.
I mean, look, the excitement about this offense is predicated on Tank Dell being the same guy that he was last year. And through 3 games that he has played, he wasn't. So, yes, you need Tank to be Tank from 2023. And, I mean, Diggs has had an explosive play in every game except for Indianapolis. You know, so he's doing enough for the but adding Dell to the equation, 2023 Dell, is where you really start to see the potential of this offense. That's where you really can take it to the next level. And Joe Mixon. Like, you're getting Joe Mixon and Tank Dell back potentially against Buffalo. You're going to have a much better chance, and a much better offense than what you had against Jacksonville.
Yeah, I think the next key is get Tank heavily involved, get Mixon healthy, and then this offense can take you to the promised land. And all these flaws that you have can be overcome. Because I do think that the running back can make the O-line better. And I think Joe Mixon has kind of shown that. So I think if you get those two guys back, the key to success for this Texas team is an elite offense, a defense that has elite talent at important positions that can change games, whether it's just more sacks from Hunter and Anderson and then Lassiter and Stingley doing what they do. Because we really haven't seen Stingley like we saw him last year when he was defensive player of the month. We've seen him fine. He's been on the field, he's been available, he's there, he's battling. But we haven't seen like elite Stingley yet. And we always talk about games. There's going to be a Derek Stingley game.
Yes, absolutely.
There is going to be a Derek Stingley game where you look back, we're talking on Reaction Monday, and we look back and we say, okay, they won that game because of Derek Stingley.
Yes, that's coming. Eventually they're going to have to challenge the corners. It feels like teams have been content to not consistently challenge him. Justin Jefferson, when you have that guy, you could challenge Derek Stingley. But eventually somebody who doesn't have Justin Jefferson is going to have to, like Josh Allen's going to have to challenge Stingley or Lassiter on Sunday. And he's going to have to do it with Keon Coleman or Khalil Shakur or Marquise Valdez-Scantling. Now, something we need to or Curtis Samuel.
Let's look at the tight end too.
That's what I was getting. Well, that Stingley shouldn't never end up. On
but I mean that's kind of where you go, right?
This tight end duo is
Kincaid and Knox.
This is one of the best tight end situations they're going to play against all year long.
Yeah. Do you think the Texans are still kind of vulnerable to tight ends? I feel like there's a possibility of that.
Well, if we're talking about Petrie and coverage, that's who's going to be on some of these tight ends. So. And maybe because that guy's not as tight ends aren't as fast, but they're physical. They'll get nasty with him. One thing we haven't mentioned this, like as you kind of like characterize and add to what the win was. You played that game yesterday against Jacksonville. They're down their top two linebackers, their top cornerback, their top tight end, and then they lost their top pass rusher in the third quarter. And you still had to squeak by them. So. That's seasoning that needs to get put onto this win, by the way, that we hadn't talked about yet.
Yeah, no doubt, for sure.
And their top running back got hurt in the middle of the game.
Cody Stoots, Landry Locker. It is SNL. Let's look at the state of this division. The Colts, man, they're 2-2, and Anthony Richardson got hurt. Flacco, the Jags, dead.
Dead.
With the win tonight, do you consider the Titans alive, or do you consider the Titans already dead?
The Titans aren't winning tonight. They're dead.
They're not going to beat the Dolphins with the backup QB?
No. No faith. No faith in the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, it is nice. I'd say the best thing about this is it's not BOB like yet, because, and I think this is a real talented squad, obviously, but you're not in the pillow fight that is the AFC South.
What's that? Say that again.
You're not in the pillow fight that is the AFC South.
Oh, where they were nipping at your heels, like when the Texans had to, or even last year when the teams played a little bit better. Like, I'll say this: the Colts with Flacco scare me a little bit.
Come on, what? Just because they're gonna do what they do?
What are we talking about? Come on. The Colts with Flacco scare me a little bit. They can put some stuff together. He's a better quarterback than Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, I guess they're more committed to just doing what they do well.
You think Joe Flacco is going to figure out a way to get Adonai Mitchell the football?
Maybe.
I mean, they hung on against an undefeated Steelers team yesterday. That's a good defense. Look at who the Colts have coming up. At Jacksonville, at Tennessee, Miami at home. Like, they could put 3 straight wins on the board. They'd be on a 5-game win streak coming to Houston in late October.
Yeah, and I they're quarterback proof. That's the crazy thing about Shane Steichen. The good news, I guess, is that the ceiling is limited because, like, if Shane Steichen found a franchise quarterback, I think that would be very terrifying for not just the Texans but the league. But there is like a limited ceiling, and there doesn't seem like any light at the end of the tunnel to getting like an elite quarterback in Indianapolis.
And I know Flacco fell apart in the playoff game last year, but prior to the playoff game, that dude was dialing it up with Cleveland.
Yeah, they miss him. And that's always the salt in the wounds in Cleveland, because I know people who host shows there. The worst thing that happens where fans lose their crap is they both happened yesterday. So the Browns lose with Deshaun Watson at quarterback, and then Baker Mayfield plays good as number one because the Baker stuff comes back up. And now you got Flacco. Flacco comes in and gets the job done. Although it did get interesting at the end there. Did get a little bit interesting. But, yeah, that's kind of the team you got to look at is Indianapolis, which we anticipated at the start of the year. We'll see what happens with Anthony Richardson. Kind of more of the same with him. We've kind of gotten used to that. So now there's
gets hurt, hip injury, comes back in the game, first plays a run play with Anthony Richardson, gets hurt.
What else are you going to do? You going to make him throw?
Well, can he? Probably not.
All right. What do we want to hear from DeMeco today? What do we want to watch for as practice resumes on Wednesday?
I'm going to ask him about how long can you keep playing these guys 100% of the snaps? Like, I want to find out about that. I want to see. I believe he's going to say that's just how we have to play defense, or how we choose to play defense. So I think that's what he's going to say. Are you going to ask him if he's cut Steven Sims?
No, I mean, we'll figure that out shortly. I want to ask about, Christian Harris, just get him on record. Cause I would be kind of surprised, but I just want to see how close to the vest we're looking there. That would be my question.
Is he going to say Christian's day to day? That's what he said for about Tank last week.
Man, he would say that about someone with a torn ACL. So
what is it? So she's day to day. Aren't we all,
Goodness gracious. All right. This is Reaction Monday. Landry Locker, Cody Stoots with you. Be sure to subscribe, ride along. Texans 3-1. You don't apologize for being 3-1, but this is not the it doesn't matter BOB era. There are high standards here, and there are reasons for concern. There's reasons for optimism, and you're going to be facing the best opponent that you faced all season with Bills Mafia coming to NRG. Could be a very heavy Bills crowd. I am saying last time that playoff game, when Deshaun ended up pulling the rabbit out of the hat, pretty Bills heavy. So it should be interesting to see how that whole thing goes. It's going to be a fun week for sure, no doubt.
Christian Harris is on IR designated return. He's not been kidnapped.
Yeah,
somebody's like, what's wrong with Christian Harris? He's hurt. Is he going to be back? Probably not this week, but he's close.
Yeah, he'll be back for sure. Always remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. Cody Stoots, hit him with the trademark.
Eat good, sleep good, be good. We'll talk Texans again soon.
All righty.